Terrible Feminist. I'm Theresa.
And I'm David.
And he's sick today.
So I had some food poisoning earlier, so if I am lackluster or eating because now my stomach is empty, so I'm hungry.
Pretty funny, actually. We were going out to dinner before the podcast to make sure we were both
fortified,
fed, in the zone to record, and hydrated, and et cetera, and then I am eating alone, going through my sandwich like nobody's business, because I just drove to Bellingham and was starving, and, oh, that's my water! That's my water! Give me water! Thank you.
Teresa's still thirsty, apparently. Anyway, so I went to the bathroom, and I thought I was going to be fine, but, there's just a smell. I don't know how much of this is necessary for you to know. So I'm a little extra sleepy today and crashing from all the caffeine that is no longer in my system. But we still want to talk about feminism in literature and women in literature.
Strong female characters!
And we want to start with strong female characters,
We do want to start with that. First of all, a couple of articles about strong female characters. One from Greg Rucka about, he's a comic artist, about why he writes strong female characters, and one from Sophia McDougall that was published on The New Statesman about why she hates strong female characters. And her rationale was Sherlock Holmes gets to be brilliant, solitary, abrasive, bohemian, whimsical, brave, sad, manipulative, there we go, neurotic, vain, untidy, fastidious, artistic, courageous, rude, and a polymath genius. Female characters get to be strong. And I was like, that's, a good point. And I'm kind of actually in her boat, where I'm like, please don't make strong female character a new stereotype.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a good thing, is that people in general should not be pigeonholed into, this is the rule. Like, we have the damsel in distress, we have the sassy gay friend, we have the strong female character.
We have the hero.
Yeah, I was going to say that he was next on my list. I was going to call him the hunky hero.
The hunky hero. We have the nerdy hero.
We do have nerdy heroes. This is definitely becoming a thing. Robert Langdon, we were talking a little bit about Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code, which is a series that I saw and read a while ago, and so I don't remember it quite as well. So we will not really be discussing it.
It was funny because he was mixing them up. I was like, I don't remember that happening in Angels and Demons, but I only saw the movie, so... For those of you who have read Angels and Demons and seen the movie, feel free to tell us what happened.
I didn't see the movie. Maybe I did see the movie.
I saw it.
It was it wasn't that memorable.
I enjoyed the movie. It was fun. I remember Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks is a nice guy.
I enjoy him.
I like Tom Hanks.
I like Tom Hanks too.
Let's just make that. Let's change what the podcast is.
The podcast is now going to be about Tom Hanks.
I'm a terrible Tom Hanks lover.
I'm a terrible Tom Hanks fan. And yes. Strong female character should not be a new stereotype, because we don't want to put people in roles. Like, we just talked about gender roles and how those aren't cool and hurt everyone. And
whenever there's an expectation that people will behave in this particular way, that is a problem.
It is a problem, especially because there's a difference between poor writing and stuff. So, to talk about strong female characters, we're going to use a couple of examples. We're going to go to a couple different places.
Oh, so many places.
So many places. We're going to start out with women not being written for the benefit of men.
Yes. A lot of times you can see this in places where the male gaze is in clear view. We're going to talk about Star Trek eventually, so I'm just gonna dive right into it.
I have a Final Fantasy example.
Oh,
too.
Okay. Let's do that one first.
So many of you may be familiar with a game called Final Fantasy VII. And when I played Final Fantasy VII, I hadn't seen any of the other supporting media, because now there's a prequel game called Crisis Core, there's a sequel movie called Advent Children, and there is a sequel game to the sequel movie called Dirge of Cerberus that focuses on a different character, but has some fantastic lady characters. Actually, there are two sisters that have this thing going on. But Final Fantasy VII really pissed me off, especially in reference to Aerith and Tifa, because we only get them from Cloud's perspective. Although Aerith and Tifa are actually really fantastic, human, well-rounded characters, as you find out later in a lot of the supporting media, and actually way later in the game, because there's this big reveal that happens. Tifa comes off as the whiny, clingy, childhood friend that can't get over the fact that Cloud isn't interested. And Aerith comes off as the pure, innocent, hard-to-get, idealistic female.
Yeah.
That's how they come off, even though Aerith is actually kind of a tomboy and fully capable of being I'm not interested in you and you need to respect that. And Tifa is actually just I haven't seen you in 5 years. Where the fuck have you been? You've been on a Mako tank exchanging consciences with someone else. So it's confusing. But the thing is that we only get Tifa and Aerith from Cloud's perspective for most of the game, which is what makes them look like terrible stereotypical females.
This is interesting. So, this is something that we haven't talked about beforehand. But so, the male gaze is commonly used in reference to men watching women, typically in a sexual way. And so,
I don't even know what it means,
well,
apparently.
and so, like, you're talking about this, and I'm like, well...
I'm not even criticizing the game.
No.
Like, it totally made sense for the game, but I was like, oh, male perspective. Apparently that's
so
different.
male perspective, male gaze. What I was thinking of for male gaze in relation to Star Trek, which we'll get to, is there is this point where, near the beginning of the movie, there are two sort of nudie scenes, except, nothing shows, because it's Star Trek. And the first one, it's Kirk in bed with two alien women, and the women are very lithe, they are very sexy, and the point maybe is a little bit to be like, look, Kirk is good looking, but there are also two very attractive alien women, and it's like, hey, men, come watch this movie, there's sex in it. And then there's another part, which is, the one that got in trailers and things.
Viral a little bit.
Viral.
That went viral.
What was it? Viral. That went viral? No. The scene where Carol is seen in her underwear by Kirk. And in the movie, it's sort of like a poking fun, haha, Kirk is sneaking a peek at her. But it is also a moment where it's like, also anyone interested in female-bodied folk gets to sneak a peek at her too. And typically in media and society and our specific culture, that is the men.
And the issue with Carol's naked scene was that it didn't do anything to further her character. Mm-hmm. Whereas Kirk's naked scene was about him.
Yeah, it was about him, being a
being
playboy
a womanizer,
guy.
Yeah. A bit of
and I feel like...
a sexually active young man.
Yeah, and it felt to me like Carol's scene was also about that.
It was also about Kirk.
Being a womanizer, because he's looking.
Yeah.
But we know that about Kirk. Everyone knows that about Kirk.
But, if Carol was going to be naked on screen, it should have been about her.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree with that.
But that's kind of what we meant. Women should not be written. The audience shouldn't be written for the benefit of the male gaze, but also not for the benefit of male character. The next thing we were going to talk about was the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Did we mention this at all on our did that make it into the
This was edited out of our last episode because Theresa and I hadn't really talked about it, which meant that we both were coming at it from different places and not really on the same page and in a place to cooperatively talk about it.
Well, or even to articulate it well.
Yeah.
I feel that some of my comments weren't particularly...
I just wanted to say, so what the Bechdel test is it was created by Alison Bechdel, referenced first in her comic Dykes to Watch Out For. What it is, essentially, is in this story, are there two female characters, I believe they have to be named, and do they speak to each other about something other than a man? And you can apply this to anything. It can be to homosexual characters who speak to each other about something other than their sexuality, to disabled characters who speak to each other about something other than their disability, but typically it's used as a measure for, are there women and do they talk to each other about something other than the affections of a male?
Basically making them real people who are well-rounded, etc., etc.
Essentially.
Although, this test is not a standard for judging the worth of a story, nor is it a measurement for judging a story's feministic value. I want to use Night Vale, actually, as an example of that. Although, recently, Night Vale did pass the Bechdel test with its 2-year anniversary, because we had Tamika talking to Lauren, and we also had Tamika and Astrid disagreeing about what was best for the town.
Did you say Astrid?
Oh, God, her name is Astrid in Fringe.
Yeah, it's Dana.
It's Dana in Night.
I only know that because I've been watching Fringe lately.
My bad. Tamika and Dana talking about what's best for the town. But previously, because of the format of Night Vale, since we get it through Cecil, Welcome to Night Vale is a podcast.
Really?
Yes, it's a for those of you who don't know, it's a podcast in the style of old-time radio, and the host, Cecil, gives us the news of the town Night Vale.
And it's just him, and he's the only host.
Regardless, though, because of the way in which Night Vale's story is presented, it was very hard for it to pass the Bechdel test. Mm-hmm. However, it was super feministic.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole lot about women being in power. There's a lot about people in general being accepted for who they are, whether they are literally a 5-headed dragon, or
a faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home.
Or just, interested in men. It's never a problem in Night Vale because they don't bat an eye at anything. And so it really creates an accepting culture for everyday people and also for crazy monsters.
And to point out specific examples, we have a mayor who is female, just right off the bat, Mayor Pamela Winchell. A lot of the interns there are female, actually.
I don't know if they're in a positive. All of the interns, except maybe Maureen. I don't know if she's dead or not.
We don't know if Maureen is dead.
She blew away.
But Dana is the only one to survive, survive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but no spoilers. Yeah, Dana, as you said, Dana's the only one to survive.
There's also a moment where Cecil is talking about Tamika in the 2-year anniversary,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, where Cecil is talking about Tamika and says, this young woman, no, this person. He ends up going away from like her gender and being like this person. Bechdel test is not a standard to judge female characters by. Like, just because two female characters do not talk does not mean that they are not real characters. But it is a measure of whether women are being written for men, almost, kind of, sort of, or like if we are including them in a way that is real.
It's a good place to look at for seeing whether or not they are going to have some more representation that is not directly related to being a prop for the men. Because if they're not talking, if they only talk to other men, then it seems like it ties the male character's actions into them. And that doesn't necessarily happen, but it's a lot easier for it to happen.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. It's not always the case if women aren't talking, because sometimes there just aren't other women for them to talk to because of the circumstance of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But
and Mike, well, actually, we'll get to that pretty soon here.
Yeah.
Shall we delve in?
Yes, let's delve in. So David and I have some different perspectives on the Bechdel test. So we're going to give you our perspectives and tell you our little red flags for certain things, etc., etc.
Okay, back to Star Trek. Because it's Star Trek! I really enjoy the new Star Trek movies. I prefer the TV show, but I think that might be a formatting thing for me. It's sort of like when people say, do you like Star Wars or Star Trek better? I feel like they're asking an unanswerable question because one of them is one type of media and the other one is a different type of media.
I'm a bad fan because I often will say Star Wars when I mean Star Trek and Star Trek when I mean Star Wars.
I think you've done that before.
I have, talking to you. And it physically pains him.
It does. I'm going to throw up again. Anyway, in this most recent movie, there were a lot of things that I disliked that the writers did, that I thought was just poorly done. And one of them was the handling of Carol's character. We talked about how the scene with Kirk seeing her naked was not about her, it was about Kirk. And even though the movie's about Kirk, whatever, they can write it better. And Star Trek has a history of doing it better. With Carol, what happens in her storyline for me is that she gets injured, she becomes sort of a helpless person, she's kidnapped by a big bad male character, and then the big good male character has to save her. And so that really relied a little too heavily on the damsel in distress trope for me. And that's something that I think should be seen and pointed out in stories when it happens, because it's important to hold ourselves to a high standard and also to use it as a way for me to improve my own writing in the future.
Whereas I come from a slightly different standpoint than David on this. I believe, we're going to use Carol as the main example here, just because it explains the difference of opinion that David and I have, I think, fairly well. From as I understand it, David is tired of old stereotypical roles for women, and believes that we should point out when those roles are used in order to make them not happen anymore, to make them non-stereotypically female.
My main concern is when those roles are used as a way to promote the casual sexism that is apparent in our culture.
Okay, I'm still a little lost on what that means exactly.
It means that there is a typical role where the woman needs to be saved by the man in a lot of stories, and the fact that they relied on that and they used it reinforces that role in young women's heads today.
So the fact that the role is stereotypically a female role.
That women are typically saved by men is I think, problematic.
Okay. And I personally feel that pointing out that role and criticizing it will tabooize it. I feel that the Bechdel test is best used in a overarching way. That if our media, to a percentage that we deem worthy, I've been saying 50%, but I think I would like it if 90% of our media was passing the Bechdel test.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's falling under 75%, that it's kind of an issue. But it's very difficult for me to respect the opinion of someone who goes, oh, well, it didn't pass the Bechdel test, it's not worth anything. Because it's not a judgment of a story, and it doesn't really say anything about things. But I do think that the Bechdel test is a good standard to make writers of any sort portray women in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if two women are talking to each other about something other than men, then they're having real conversations. Because I don't talk to the girls in my life about girls, women, children, etc. I just don't talk about boys a lot. However, by criticizing women being in distress, I feel as though we are tabooizing this role. And I think that that's not a cool thing to do, because women do end up as victims. And I don't want just men to be in that role either. I want it to be, representative. And I think that it would be really cool if we had some way to pull these numbers. If we could be hey, let's make it so that, men and women are not being in any role more than the other, like that it's real about it, because life is vast and varied and strange, and everyone ends up a victim, and everyone ends up a hero, and everyone ends up the tool to the accessory sometimes. You know, like I don't think it's unrealistic that Carol was taken hostage, and I think it's different because David says, well, it's because she's the girl, and I'm like, well, it's because she was the offspring of the person that Khan was trying to deal with. Also, I feel like everyone was in danger in that, and it wasn't just Kirk saving her, it was saving everyone who was on that ship at that point in time when Khan took control. But details. To illustrate the difference between mine and David's opinions, it is, I don't like coming down on any role, because I think they're all real.
And one thing is that I would like to say is that I don't just focus on Carol and on, like, when that happens. I try to keep this in mind for any type of writing. And so, for example, one of the great characters in The Wrath of Khan was Khan, of course, as Benedict Cumberbatch. And Benedict Cumberbatch did a great job playing him, but Khan is not really a white person's name. And that's something that frustrates me, is when whitewashing happens. And eventually we'll get to Avatar, but if anyone saw Avatar: The Last Airbender, the movie, the shameful movie where the good guys went from being Inuit to white, and the bad guys, but they were suddenly Arabic in the movie.
Strange.
It was really unfortunate.
I agree with David that a role should not be stereotypically female. Like, I don't want to even call it the damsel in distress, but the role of the victim or whoever is taken hostage should not always be occupied by women. And it should not always be occupied by men, because that's what worries me, is that pointing it out and criticizing it when it is a woman will lead to just men being in that role, and I don't want to do that to men. I also think but it is a problem, and David and I actually had this conversation at dinner, where I was talking about the power dynamics of the presentation of sexual interaction between men and women, and how it completely affected my sexual life as a teenager, actually, because I was very willing to receive, but not very willing to give, because of the connotations that were associated with hand-to-genital and oral-to-genital sex when it came, like, a woman giving it to a man, with the whole, like, get on your knees, bitch. The way in which men often try to rape female characters, the way in which sex is shown as dominance and control and ownership all the time in our media, and we skip over it when it's romantic or is healthy or anything like that. And I think the same thing applies to when women are always the victim. It's just we go about it different ways, I think.
One thing I would like to say, whenever assault and things come up, I like to take a moment and think about just how extremely detrimental that our media's sexual presentation in general is to everyone, to men and women. And I would like to say that I feel like women are much more negatively impacted by it, because it teaches men a certain type of behavior that might be considered okay. For example, the idea that you don't need to take no for an answer, and if you keep trying and you show up at the house with the boombox, they'll love you.
Sophie, one of our beautiful listeners, Sophie, actually asked us if we had talked about this exact trope storyline.
And now we've mentioned it.
Because that is the plot of most romantic comedies. Boy meets girl says no, boy doesn't take no for an answer, shows up, continues to harass her, basically, until she's like, okay.
I really do like you.
You're right. Wow, you're such a dork. All right.
Man, that's worked on me so much. No, it hasn't.
No, it really never has. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's really creepy.
Yeah. I live so far out in the middle of nowhere, I'd be like, why are you even here? Aren't the coyotes gonna eat you? Like...
Well, solve your problem.
Coyotes actually are pretty afraid of people. Like, if I had wolves, totally. But coyote, unless he was, like, the size of my cat. My cat's pretty tiny. I don't think although we've had a screech owl around lately, and I've had to keep bringing her in, and she's so worried about her because she'd be
I thought the coyotes were the size of your cat, and only if the coyotes were small would they eat people.
No. If the young person who was coming to, like, woo me, which wasn't really wooing, like, wooing is, hey, can I take you out tonight? And me being like, yeah, sure. And then, like, would you also like a movie? Or can I pay for dinner because I would like to, like, do that for you, not because there are any strings attached, or I expect you to kiss me later.
Right on the forehead.
Yeah, etc., etc. But no, if this person was as small as my cat, the coyotes might eat him.
There we go.
Yes.
An image understood and delightful still.
Hello, Theresa! You are so tall, but so beautiful!
Please! See how beautiful I am too! It's like, have you seen Ella Enchanted?
I have seen
It's the elf with the giant lady.
Oh,
they were so cute.
They were really cute. I enjoyed the movie interpretation of Ella Enchanted. I did.
I was talking to someone at work the other day, and they're like, "Oh my god, I hated that movie." Like she was just like it was just boring. I was like, "But the kiss scene was so good." And she's like, "I hated that." I was like, "Well, the reason I liked it was because in Ella Enchanted, I only saw parts of it, but this woman is put under a spell where she has to do what everyone tells her, and she's with this guy who she really likes, and he says, 'Kiss me.' And then as she leans forward, he says, that wasn't an order, and he doesn't know, but he still makes it her choice and makes it very clear that her consent is important."
There's also a moment, because usually there's a sound effect for whenever the magic takes hold of Ella and forces her to do something. And the sound effect, it's dimmed. It's very small, which shows how much Ella's already like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I enjoyed how consensual the kiss was and how much attention was paid to it.
Mm-hmm. That was a nice digression. Yes. I liked it.
But to get back to how I like to criticize when a story isn't living up to my feministic values. Mm-hmm. Recently, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I blog from time to time. It's funny, this is like the first blog post I've done in like a year.
I need to catch up on that.
Get back to my blog. I did a blog post about Guardians of the Galaxy because there is a moment in which a character's behavior does not make sense, like just for the way things are. For those of you who have seen the movie, I'm talking about the scene with Peter, Gamora, and Yondu, in which Yondu is all like, "What's she done? Fill your head with sediment, boy?" And like the world is ending, and he's coming down on Peter for having emotions. I'm like, really, Yondu? Get your priorities straight.
Perfect time to do that.
Seriously? But his behavior doesn't make any sense in this scene, and also demeans the female character, who is the reason that they might have a chance at the world, the universe essentially not going to shit. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Also, at the end of that scene, he gives Peter the credit for a plan that will only work because of Gamora, in a way that really baffles me, because he attributes the success of this plan to Peter's genitals by saying, "I always knew you had a scrote," and I'm like, what the fuck?
I mean,
like it's very small. Like I missed it the first time, but
I thought I wanted to see this movie because of the dancing tree and the angry raccoon, but. Now I just want to hear the scrote lines.
You have to listen for it. It's at the very end of the scene, and I didn't catch it the first time. Also, in this movie, Xandar, that's the name of the planet, Xandar, which I had to look up how to spell, because I was like, oh, this is unfortunate. Xandar is the planet that the villain of the movie is targeting, and if he reaches the surface of the planet, everyone will die. Mm-hmm. And still, we only have male soldiers on the front lines. Mm-hmm. Which was really confusing. I was like, okay, everyone's gonna die. Let's keep the women behind the lines, or not let them fight, or whatever. Whatever
the reason that, for some reason in space military...
Yeah, it didn't make any sense, especially because Xandar is not Earth.
Yeah.
And I understand that in our culture, that we don't have women on the front lines, like the U.S. doesn't. I don't think any other countries do. It was actually really unfortunate. In high school, I heard about a woman being taken off the front lines because it decreased morale. Like, she saved some guys. And if anyone wants to find that story for me, I'd be interested in examining it now. But Xandar isn't Earth. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need to be limited by these Earth things. So that's how I like to go about criticizing things, because I would like to see more men in victim roles, and I'd like to see more women in heroic roles. And I just am more for the equality of the roles than criticizing when someone does one.
And complexity in both roles, yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Or humanity.
Yes, humanity. We want real human characters.
Yeah. So, criticism. It's a fun thing to talk about. I'm thinking Legend of Korra, yeah?
Oh, yes. So, we want to talk about how pieces of media do this well.
Yeah.
As well, how easy it is to actually do. So, we talked about Star Trek a little bit already, and how it doesn't actually pass the Bechdel test. Does Into Darkness pass the Bechdel? I don't think it does.
I didn't watch it for it. I didn't know.
I don't. Correct us if it doesn't, but from my memory and from David's, it doesn't. We don't think it does. And we were talking about how it could have, because originally, I had a conversation with another friend about this movie, and she was like, "Oh, well, it would have been really great if they just had Uhura and Carol have a conversation just somewhere else." And I was like, that would have completely disrupted the plot, and how dare you inflict this test upon this movie in order to make it pass? But David and I were talking about an example that wouldn't have disrupted the plot at all, and that would have been fairly easy to implement with the writers.
would not have been a
I
problem.
agree with David on this point, that if the writers had tried, they could have easily passed the Bechdel test.
Mm-hmm.
When Carol goes to disarm the bombs with Bones,
Mm-hmm.
she could have taken Ahura instead of Bones if the bombs were disarmed by a linguistic key
Mm-hmm.
instead of a surgeon's
magic
ability
hands.
to whatever. And the reason she has to take Bones at all is because her arm is broken.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was a linguistic key to begin with, it would have been a tag team effort instead of just a be my hands because I am broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even if the bomb was just in a different language and she needed to read the user's manual or some such. I don't know.
I think they were from Star Command, so it wouldn't have made sense for them to be in a different language, but they still could have had a linguistic key.
Yeah.
Maybe they had done something different because...
A code!
Yeah, a code or something, just because they were special bombs.
I only used the special bombs on Captain Kirk.
But it could have worked, and it would have allowed Carol and Ahura to have worked together and also, had their own, separate issue, separate from the men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was something else. I can't believe I forgot it. I was also frustrated with how I felt like everything that Ahura said was in relation to Spock, and a lot of her actions were in relation to Spock, even though I know that she talks to the Klingons.
He sounds frustrated because I keep pointing it out. I'm like, no, she talks to the Klingons, and also, it's not all about Spock and her relationship, because it's her relationship, and she totally comes down on him right when they're about to leave for that mission, and he doesn't want to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just you need to realize that this affects me, and how dare you. So, David and I disagree on this point, but...
I felt like it was putting Ahura in a bad position because they're in a professional setting about to go on a dangerous mission, and she brings up something that is trivial in comparison, I felt.
Oh, I wouldn't call it trivial. I would call it very important to her, and maybe the only time she could get Spock to fucking take it seriously.
Well, and the only time she could get him to stay in a room because space was outside. Spock just puts on a spacesuit. No! Feelings! I can't!
Can't deal. You can't deal. I mean, Kirk had done that earlier in the movie, too. As well. Where Spock turns him in, basically, for saving his life. And then Kirk's like, what the fuck, man? Apparently you cannot get Spock to have conversations about feelings in any other setting than the professional one. But, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it still stands. David feels that Ahura didn't have much interaction in the movie aside from her relationship with Spock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there are things that do it well. The Bechdel test isn't all that hard to pass.
Correct.
In fact, Legend of Korra is doing a fantastic job.
Which is a children's cartoon show, I would like to point out. Oh, do you think...
Is it children's?
I guess a lot of people have been dying lately. That's kind of dark.
I think it's just a TV show that is maybe possibly marketed towards kids.
Well, my main feeling is that it's on Nickelodeon. None of those commercials are marketed towards me, and that's how I figure out what something is marketed towards.
That's true, but the audience.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Though children probably don't watch James Stewart, The Daily Show. Sorry, with Jon Stewart. There we go. Because all of those ads are for bourbon. And I'm like, I need to go get bourbon now.
It's just this weird idea in America that animation is for children.
Yeah.
Even though it's not true anymore, and all the 20-year-olds my age are watching this show.
Yeah. But so anyway, in Legend of Korra, there is this person that's in the Avatar universe known as, believe it or not, the Avatar. In this one, it's a young woman named Korra. And at one point, she has a crush on this guy named Mako, but Mako is seeing this woman named Asami.
Because she hits him with her motorbike.
Because that's how you get guys to like you. Future reference.
It was totally his fault.
Well, yeah, so make it their fault, and then they'll like you. That's how it works. Head trauma. It helps. No. It happened in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Anyway, both girls end up with Mako at different points in time, and then both of them end up not with Mako, period.
Even though at one point they both are still interested in his affections.
True. But, they end up becoming, they've kind of been friends from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But they address that they both had this relationship with Mako, and that it isn't affecting their relationship, and that they don't have to be competitors or adversaries or not like each other.
Which I thought was a beautiful thing, because it's so often the case in media and in shows that women are taught that other women are your competition. Like, you gotta beat them out and get the sex prize, which is the man with the penis, who then you know...
Because obviously, if you're not the best woman on the block, he won't like you because he's incapable of having his own preferences that deviate from, like, what society might deem the most womanly.
Well, and also, like, he can't see you as a full person, just, as
just
someone...
moves.
Yeah, basically. And that's just it's disgusting that that's the way
Yeah.
that we key our media and our entertainment. And it's so great that in the show, Asami and Corey, they poke fun at it a little bit and they joke and they make them the other one think that they're going to be mad, and then they're both like, no,
it's
whatever.
Stupid.
Why would we want to fight about that? We both have so much worthwhile in ourselves.
Yeah.
Why should we worry about whether or not we like the same guy?
Very true. And Corey and Asami are actually running around doing all sorts of really good for the planet stuff right now.
They're just kicking ass and taking names.
They are. Korra and Asami have been kind of the kick-ass team of the third season so far.
Mako and Bolin are just...
They're just getting their asses handed
They're
to
like
them.
the Stooges. They're so cute.
They are pretty adorable. They keep trying and it keeps not working out. It's okay. I'm expecting good power-up times from them soon because Bolin's gonna learn metal bending someday.
I don't think so.
I think he is. They made too much of a plot point out of it. He has to.
Well, like, I have my own theory about the plot point, but...
I'm excited, but this is Feminist podcast. Yes. If you're interested in our theories about what's going to happen in Korra,
email us. We'll tell you.
We'll tell you, but it doesn't matter because it's coming out tomorrow. Like, the finale's coming out tomorrow.
Oh, it's the finale?
Yeah, the finale's tomorrow.
I'm excited now.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I got a pedal.
So I guess we're going to wrap it up now. We covered most of what we want to talk about. If you feel like we missed anything or want to, like, talk to us about something that we just didn't cover, or something that we did mention that you want to talk about more, we'll do the research and find some articles and continue on the Facebook page or etc.
And media is very vast, and we know that we didn't cover everything, and we just mainly talked about movies and TV shows. We didn't even get to books.
Oh my god, we didn't!
Yeah, so, and we posted a few things on our media pages, like Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, about strong female characters in comic books. I think we've probably posted a few Joss Whedon things about why do you write strong female characters, and his response is because you keep asking me that question.
Yeah.
And so it definitely is a thing in literature. I just finished reading The Sound of the Fury, and man, Faulkner...
Well, when I hear strong female character, I don't think of a character that is capable, necessarily, or even a character that's like I have shoulders.
Yeah, you do.
For a lady. I have a large bone structure, and I'm a very capable young woman. I know Taekwondo, and I can take down people. I also like weapons a lot, and I'm very feisty. But that doesn't mean that I'm a strong female character. I would be, like, let's say someone condensed me to those traits that I just named. That wouldn't be a well-written character. I wouldn't be human. I wouldn't be real.
You'd be shoulders, mainly.
I'd mainly be shoulders.
Because that was your main physical description. I have shoulders.
I have shoulders.
Ooh, look at those feisty shoulders.
Ooh, yes, my feisty shoulders. But I actually think I'm going to get so much heat for this. We can debate this all day long. I'm talking to our listeners here. I think Bella Swan is a strong female character.
Bring it.
Because she's human. Yes, no, she's pretty pathetic. Like, as a person, she's klutzy, and she makes some pretty stupid decisions where you're like, Bella, no, that's obviously a poor choice. But she always owns her actions. She always makes decisions.
So you feel that she is a real example of a human character?
Yeah, I feel like she's a human being, not a cardboard cutout. That's not to say that I think the Twilight series is, like, a fantastic work of literature. I enjoyed them when I read them. I'll probably never read them again because of the big divide over them. Like, the love and hate totally ruined them for me. But I do believe that Bella Swan is a strong female character because she's well written.
I would love to give a comment so everyone could know how I feel about Twilight.
But he doesn't even remember.
I read the first book, and I remember it wasn't my favorite. I thought there were some things that were bad about it. I know about things that are bad about it, but I don't feel right all the time criticizing things that I do not personally know much about.
Twilight could have been a lot better, but I don't think Bella Swan is a poor example. Like, I think strong female characters should mean human, real, well-written, not shoulders.
Not just shoulders.
Not just shoulders.
Women should have more than shoulders,
they should have
okay?
more than shoulders and a love for weaponry.
Probably.
That's what they should have. Next month, we're going to talk about reproductive rights.
And that will probably mean touching a little bit on abortion at one point.
Hobby Lobby decision.
Yeah, the Hobby Lobby decision and other things of that nature. And I have an uncle who sometimes makes me go research these things.
Oh,
so
that's
I can
right. I saw that.
show him what a fool he is. No, he actually does a fairly decent job at trying to listen and be open-minded, even if we come down on opposite sides of the fence.
I got an email from David that was originally given to his uncle with tons of links and research, and it was beautiful and glorious, and a lot of that actually ended up on our social media queue.
Did it?
Yeah, it hasn't gotten on to our social media yet.
Well, and now we're going to be talking about it.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one, and don't get food poisoning.
Yes, don't be like